Welcome to the Generation Fit podcast. I'm Coach Chris with Coach Benji. Today, we went over Q&A on my Instagram page based on what you guys are questioning about. All right, enjoy.
All right, let's get into the questions. What do we got? What are the best questions we've got from your audience?
Yeah, so as of yesterday, one of the biggest ones was corporate lunches. So as a person who eats at their, they accompany them at work with a lunch in a cafeteria, or they get $20 for Uber Eats. Okay, so two big options. And then the question was, how do I navigate that and stay on track with losing fat, building muscle, etc.?
Yeah,
So
that's a good question. I had someone that just asked that similar question, a client of mine, and I mean, he didn't have the Uber option, so he was kind of pigeonholed and he was more like screwed, honestly, because the options at his work were not that great. So let's just go with like the one or the two for a second. It's like, okay, you have two options, Uber or actually at your place of work, what they accommodate you with. Do you like what they're accommodating you with at work? And two, does it actually hit the standards in which we'll talk about? So like, is it, generally fit within your calorie goal while also hitting your protein ratio? If you like it and it does, then great, you could do that. If it doesn't hit both of those things, then you're forced to do the Uber Eats option anyways, because that other option just quite frankly is not going to fly. So then from the Uber Eats option, then it just comes to, eating foods that meet those principles, whether it's from a fast food place or, a restaurant or something like that. And maybe you can touch on kind of what those principles are in terms of what we look like for these meals in general, whether it's either option.
Yeah. So in terms of the meal structure overall, especially for going out, it's like you really want to lean on very lean meats, preferably not breaded, just as its own thing, and then have sides or whatever it comes with. And even so, most of the time you're probably only gonna eat half of it because it's so loaded with calories. For example, like French fries, like loaded mashed potatoes, especially sandwiches, like the bread is like buttered on the top and the bottom, et cetera, et cetera. What I would say though, yes, it is tough, especially with the cafeteria down below.
Yeah.
I do have somebody working for Samsung at the national headquarters, and it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. I'll send you pictures after this. And it's like bento boxes, and which is great. But then I'm telling you right now, it's like one corner is dumplings, one corner is like kimchi's fine, but kimchi, and then it becomes like ribs, and ribs is the fattiest cut of any meat,
Yeah.
except for the butt. And then it's like this much amount of meat, and then everything else is rice, right? So,
Yeah.
right,
And
in this
they're probably
case,
cooking it with a lot of extra oils and stuff like that too. So
oh, don't get me started on the seed oils. But,
yeah.
but yes, the whole point is that you want to get lean meats, preferably on its own as best you can, especially when you're downstairs at work. And most of the time, you get used to looking at the workers and working with them, talking with them, and they can probably honestly provide you with something as long as you get, have a conversation with one of them. Be like, hey, can I just have like whatever it is, like chicken, beef, fish, whatever it is. Maybe you have to pay a little bit more if it's downstairs at the cafeteria, sure. Or you can get a menu that they usually come out with at that point. I know, like when I worked at other headquarters, there's like salad bars and a la carte stuff that is comped, right? Like the entire thing. Like if you're in a very nice building, then it's like, yes, you have a sushi station, you have a grill station, and all that kind of stuff. So if that's the case, then that's super easy because then you have the full reign on everything. I think this is where you're in the cafeteria downstairs, and it's like basically grade school
lunch. Yeah, I was gonna say it's like they got like three options, and it's like the evil old lunch lady that's like 96 years old with the hairnet. Yeah,
yeah. So
she's like a Nazi.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, she hates you, like plops it. It looks like dung, and it's just like plop, and then you just walk away, and you're like, oh, I'll have to eat this.
yeah.
It's like prison food.
'Cause that was like, I think that was my last the client that asked me that question. Like that was his situation, and like every option was bad. Like there was like no option on the table that was good. And I was like, all right, like you basically like I just wouldn't do that then. Like instead, I'd restructure how you go about your meals, and it's like I'd bring protein snacks to the. You have one or two options probably in this case. It's like you bring protein snacks to the option, you combine those together to get like 40 grams of protein. And then if you want to combine like a snack like a serving of avocado oil chips or something along with that, or wait for a bigger dinner. You could do something like that, or if you have a microwave, you could do a pre-made microwavable meal like Kevin's or something if you have a little bit of a larger budget, and that would be a really good option too. I have some clients that are doing that, so or alternating off of those two strategies. So I think both of those work really, really well if your lunch lady at the cafeteria hates you and doesn't give you anything good to eat.
Yeah, it's just tough, especially when you can't. The whole point is like you can control what they are basing off of. It's tough. It's definitely tough because then most of the
Yeah.
time they don't even prioritize protein. It's the worst margins for any business, or when they look at costs, it's the worst, right? You're not going to get any money back from protein. They only get, at least for a company, it's the food section of the company is
Yeah.
definitely is on the back end, which is like if I can cut to cost, fire people, like that's the section that you cut off right away.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
on the other side of the spectrum, so Uber Eats, I think this is the way easier side. It just
Definitely.
needs planning. So I have plenty of clients who don't cook at all until they get home, and it's like
Yep.
barely still. And for Uber Eats, or I would just say dining out in general, your best bet is just take a look where your location is, do like a radius of like a 10-minute span, right? 10-minute radius. Find out what you have in that 10-minute radius with restaurants, fast food, whatever it might be, and then you can delegate what menu items in each one of these restaurants. Make a nice list, a Google Doc, right? A nice list of all like the lean protein sources, meals that are probably, one closer to 1 to 10, 1 to 15 ratio of protein to calories. And you can probably fit a lot of foods within there. So a big example that I've had most of my clients do is like Chick-fil-A is an easy one, right? You can get grilled nugs and a crispy chicken sandwich and still be like 600 calories for like 60 grams of protein,
Yeah.
give or take. The Taco Bell nuggets that were limited edition were unbelievable.
They were limited edition. They weren't permanent.
No, it was only for
The
two
gym
or three
people are
weeks.
gonna riot, man. Like that's crazy. But
Oh,
Taco Bell has a lot of good options, anyways. Like in terms of like pure macros, I don't know how it would make my stomach feel, but it's like you could get like triple chicken with like the basic taco that doesn't
Yep.
have like that works. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and you put a lot of toppings on there too because a lot of them aren't calorie dense, like the ones that are just like vegetables or lettuce or whatever. So I think that's a great option. I mean, these are two places that most people don't associate with being high in protein, low in calories, but like
Oh
it's
yeah.
there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's why it's that's what I'm saying is like you can do anything. These are the fast food ones. These are the ones that
I
most
had
people
one
are
guy
going to.
tried to do McDonald's, and I was like, that's the hardest one. Like I think
McDonald's is
like
tough.
I think the only one you could do at McDonald's in America, because in Europe like it doesn't suck as much, is like 10th pound patties. Like literally, you would just order that, and there's nothing else you could order, and it would still be like cutting it close in terms of like calorie to protein ratio. It's like you literally could not get anything else. So I have it on the list there. For some reason, you're stranded in the middle of the night, and there's only a McDonald's. But I mean, I don't think anyone wants to choose that. So I would stick to like the Chick-fil-A's, Taco Bell's, Chipotle's, Panda Express. Subway, there, Jersey Mike's, like there's lots of customizable options there that could work. I would say like those are probably like the big ones that the majority of my clients go to. Would you say yours is probably similar, right?
Yeah, it's what in terms of especially chains, fast food, like those are definitely the easy ones because then you can
Hmm.
just control how much meat, right? Like the whole point is that yes, you'll pay a little bit more for the meat,
Yeah.
but because of that, you're also hitting your targets more. And then in terms of the size, you just eat about half. In terms of like general restaurants, here's the thing: most places around where you will have most likely pizza slash Italian. You'll probably have a Chinese. You might have, especially if you're in a city, then you might have like gyros, Greek
Yeah.
food. And then what else is very, very popular in terms of being around? Pizza, wings, Chinese. I mean, that's like those are usually the biggest ones I can
Yeah,
think of.
definitely.
American, and it's general American, right? So in any of those cases, you can definitely customize orders where you're like, hey, I would just like for example, if you go to an Italian restaurant, this is the one thing that I like to do. I get a grilled chicken sandwich, throw a bunch of vegetables, whatever one you want on there. I get hot sauce on the side, and then basically is they just give you like a pound of chicken. I'm not even kidding. Most places will give you like a pound of chicken on
Yeah.
a full foot sub long, and then you just move one half of the chicken and toppings and move it to the other side, and then you have like a 700 calorie big ass sub that you probably can't fit in your mouth like this high.
Yeah.
and then you have like, I'm not joking, I think it's like 70 grams of protein in that.
Probably, yeah. I would say like around 70, if not more. I mean, something that people ask, because we've talked about this a lot in past podcasts, is just oh, well, can I do this strategy where like I get to eat kind of whatever I want at this meal, and then at the other ones I do more protein? It's like you could, like you can load protein earlier in the day, later in the day, and have your middle meal be more to your exact liking without protein, if that's the case. But I noticed that people who tend to do that and they don't load their protein throughout breakfast and lunch, it gets a lot harder for them to hit their protein goal, because then they go home and then they want to end the day on like a bang, so to speak, in terms of the things that they enjoy the most. And then they just screw themselves over because of that. So I think it's a lot easier to hit your protein goal and also enjoy your favorite foods that aren't necessarily protein dense by loading protein in all the meals leading up to the meal that you actually want to eat, whatever it is that you want to eat. I would say that that's probably the thing that would make the most sense, just based on, hundreds of clients' data now, noticing people who just try to eat whatever the heck they want in the middle of the day. I mean, if they don't do it perfectly their last meal of the day for dinner, then they're never hitting their protein goal, I feel like.
Yeah. That's kind of the point. That's what's so hard, especially people in general. It's just nobody really gets their protein target from the start. And then imagine like you're trying to get your protein target at lunch at a cafeteria.
Yeah, that's hard.
Very tough, unless you bring your own snacks, like you mentioned before. And then you need a deliberate action steps to be able to get the protein from the beginning. That's why it's like, yes, if you're the average sized man, let's just say you're about 180 pounds and you need to get about 150 grams of protein, just for context, that's like a pound of meat, a yogurt, and a shake, give or take, maybe a protein bar. In a day. So like if you wanted a preload protein and eat only protein fiber, and then at night you just go balls to the wall, 1,000 calories, whatever. Like 1,000 calories, whatever the hell you wanted. It's like you could do that. I think it's only worked a few times, but I think it's just also the principle of like if every meal you come into, you're like, okay, I gotta have that much protein. You just have some sort of protein, even if it's a little bit. I think it's just a better framework to work around.
Exactly.
So it's like, yes, I have, obviously it's like you have guys like Hormozy and some other guys actually mentioned that too. Like they just backload a shit ton of protein, eat 100 grams of protein per meal, breakfast, or I guess first meal, second meal, and then at dinner they're just like, oh, I go out to eat, and then
Exactly. Yeah.
and then it's like a burger. But it's still funny because like it still has protein in it, but they just know it's like a lot of calories. Unless you just eat, for example, like a full plate of potatoes, like like loaded potatoes, like disco fries or something. I'm not a big fan of disco fries.
Well, I was also going to say, like, the leaner the options you choose at each meal, the more protein you'll get for less calories, so that you actually have more room for other things. So another trend I noticed is that the people say, man, I feel like, this is usually earlier on as they're getting into things, but man, I feel like just everything has to be protein. And it's because their version of a protein choice is like a sausage that's like higher in fats than protein, and also for whatever reason has carbs in it as well. And then the ratio of protein to the rest of the macros is so off, so they feel like, oh, that's the protein source, and then I get to have my carbs and fats. But it's like, no, you already had your carbs and fats in the protein source, and it was just a bad protein source in the first place, right? So it's like, instead, if you're not treating that protein source as your favorite part of the meal anyways, it's like you might as well get the leanest thing for the lowest amount of calories, the highest amount of protein, so that the rest of your meal is more enjoyable for you, especially starting off on this journey of trying to get more protein into your diet. So that's just another thing that I've really noticed makes a huge difference. As soon as people switch to like, okay, let's say an option that has, in their mind, is a protein option because it's a meat, but it's a horrible ratio, and they start choosing leaner options in general, all of a sudden their entire world changes pretty much as it relates to their nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just make sure you guys are looking at the options for work. That's the biggest thing. It's just like planning. It's pre-planning. So just remember, if you are able to have a menu and look at what they have on that menu, and it clearly doesn't align with your goals of losing fat, building muscle, then yes, you got to bring protein snacks. Or you have to know a guy in the back and be like, hey, I would love to have extra protein. I'll pay for it, whatever. But you want to make sure that you gotta get that protein in.
Just
and
in
then
the back of a van.
Yeah, back in a van. George Foreman grill.
Yeah.
Smoking a cigarette.
That could be like the how we keep like allowed a certain illegal immigrants to not get raided. It's like if you give them like all right, like I'll post you up in here. Like we're not gonna deport you if like you George Foreman grill me like extra protein.
All included. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm all about it. And then, yeah. And then in terms of eating out, you have Uber Eats as an option, or you have like 30 minutes to get something come back. Definitely look what's around you within a 10-minute radius, right? From there, look at all your options in terms of what they have on the menu and pre-select things, put it on a document. So then next time you order, you just know that, for example, every time I go to this Chinese restaurant, I can just order, let's just say, the chicken with broccoli and get the sauce that's called the brown sauce on the side. So then you know that's literally just chicken and broccoli with steamed sauce on the side. And then you have white rice to go with it and accompany it for a grand total of no more than 500 calories for 50 grams of protein. And then you throw sauce on it, maybe 600. The whole point is that you can control that and just do that across the board. So you have almost like a repertoire of Chinese, French, American, Italian / pizzeria. And then you can go to all these restaurants without thinking. And it just becomes part of who you are versus you get there and you have decision fatigue like, oh. And then next thing you know, you have no idea what to order. Like Patrick. That was from SpongeBob.
Yeah, these are the secret. Yeah, otherwise people are like, man, Chris has just got problems. Like, I didn't realize.
It's at the episode where he's like, he's like, what would you like to order, Patrick? And he's like, oh, and he's the whole episode is just him like that same voice. And he's like, and then somebody walks behind him, he's like, you should order a Krabby Patty. He's like, I'll have one Krabby Patty, please. And then Squidward's and then Squidward's like, for here to go. And he's like, oh, and it's like, just like repeats the process.
That's funny. Now I should watch some SpongeBob after this. All right, we got to get our second question of the 10,000 for our rushed episode for the first one in 2 months. So what do we got now?
Well, there was actually a good amount of them. Okay, so I think I'll pull up a training one here. So in terms
That's
of...
cool. We could counterbalance it.
Yeah, counterbalancing. Okay, so in terms of training, I went from going 0 times a week to going 7 times a week.
Oh my gosh. What?
I haven't worked out in about 2 years, and I don't know if this is sustainable. What do you think I should be doing going forward? Because right now I'm using motivation to push me through. But how am I going to keep doing this in the long run?
Imagine just yeah, so well, that's a loaded question because one with motivation, you say you want to get a certain result. So you're going to the gym because you want to drop fat, right? But you don't necessarily know if you're going to have motivation to do the thing that you want, but the definition of motivation is the desire to do something. So do you see how that doesn't fit with one another? It doesn't go, it's completely, I guess you would call it like an oxymoronic statement, right? So instead, I wouldn't look at it that way. I would say you don't need motivation. You need the right structure that actually allows you to, quote unquote, feel motivated to actually sustain what you're doing. I think that's what you mean when you say motivated. And 0 to 7 times a week, yeah, you don't need 7 times a week to get into shape. And if you haven't done it in 2 years, starting with 1 time a week would even be better than 7. I'd recommend 2 to 3 times a week to start 30 to 45-minute workouts for each of those. Learning the right principles of training hard and adding on top of that proper nutrition through time. That's going to be a much better bet that doesn't take up so much time, is much more sustainable, and doesn't kill you in the same stretch of the token. And also another thing I'd say is that 3 times a week is going to be almost as efficient, if not, well, it's going to be more efficient, but it's going to be almost as effective, if not more effective than the 7 times a week, because you're going to be focusing on doing the right things qualitatively during that time. And also, you're probably not going to derive, after not working out for that many years, added benefit to working out more than 3 times a week anyways, especially if you haven't been working out for that long. So, I mean, that's what I would say to someone like that is, man, like, if I were to say, okay, like, you've eaten the worst diet ever, you're 500 pounds, now magically tomorrow, chicken, rice, and broccoli, like, that would be unsustainable. If you have social anxiety, I'm not going to ask you to go to, like, you know, I'm not going to ask you to make a speech in front of like 5,000 people, like right off the dome. You know what I mean? Right off the bat. Instead, like exposure therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, when people have like mental health issues, works the same way as it does with like the gym or nutrition, in the sense of like you're so accustomed to something, you're not, you know, you're either afraid of doing the next steps that is required to get to where you want to be on your health and fitness journey, or it's just very difficult. So it kind of works the same way as exposure therapy, in the sense of don't 180 it, because you'll just shoot right back and yo-yo constantly. Instead, I mean, really what I'm trying to say in a very drawn out fashion is slow and steady wins the race here.
Yeah, the tortoise wins the race. But
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a loaded question. I think coming from experience is where it comes from more so than science, right? I think in terms of science, it's like, yes, exposure therapy is amazing, right? Slowly, incrementally adding it. One by one by one. You can always argue the opposite side, right? It's like if you just completely change your environment, go from not eating crap to chicken, broccoli, and rice only, give it, of that realm, and then you have nothing else around you. It's like, yeah, like no crap, you're gonna absolutely lose weight.
Yeah.
I think in terms of wisdom and experience, it's just we know people that come to us sign us on in terms of being in-person training, online coaching, and yes, people come in gung-ho 7 days a week. I gotta do this. I want to do this for me, the future. Like come in super, come in like Sparta, kicking down somebody down that pit, right? They're so animated to get there. And what happens is it's a massive high and a massive drop to counterbalance it. So what we do is we tell our clients, we tell anybody that's trying to make a drastic change right away, is to do something sustainable. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? Right.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard question to ask, but most people will actually land between 2 and 3 days a week, like Benji mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's way more sustainable. And it's also less daunting, right? Because imagine your lifestyle didn't include working out. That didn't include waking up early, having a gym bag, making sure you had a protein shake in there with gym clothes. Like imagine it's not just going to the gym. You have the commute, the setting up, the execution, right? There's a lot of things in this macro action, right? Like going to the gym is just up here, and then you have everything else underneath it.
Yeah.
Right, to follow through. So it's not just one big thing. So instead of doing that 7 times a week, right, and that's like disregarding everything you're already currently doing, your hobbies, your friends, your family that you want to see or do. Like imagine it's not going to be sustainable, right? So 2 or 3 times a week, it's like it allows you to plan out ahead of time, like a week in advance. Like, hey, I am able to go at 5 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning before work. I have my gym clothes in my gym bag, so when I get there, or my work clothes, so then I'm able to get there. Go work out, like put my bag away, go work out, come back, shower, and look at all that processes. Imagine doing that 7 times a week from doing literally nothing, doing that 7 times a week. It's almost setting up for failure every single time.
99% of people will quit. And that's the thing, because they're not going to be able to keep it. And then the perfect program 7 times a week is going to be very imperfect because you cannot keep it. And then that's going to lead to a lack of results from the amount of time that you're putting in. That's going to lead to disappointment, and then you're just going to quit, right? The best diet for you, the best workout routine for you is the one you could stick to and adhere to, like you said, for life. Because as it relates to dieting, I think I could say the same thing probably for getting in the gym and staying there. 95% of dieters gain the weight back. Probably 95% of people who attempt to have a transformation also alongside that diet in the gym end up not going to the gym anymore very much. So what I would say is that if you follow a routine that is sustainable, then once you get the result you want, it'll be easy to keep the result forever because what you were doing to get there was already sustainable. So you can now sustain it forever, right? It seems really simple, very logical, like when we say it that way, but most people do not look at it this way because emotions get in the way. Right. And no one really has articulated it to them in this fashion. But now that we are, stop being an idiot and listen to what we're saying, because it makes sense. Like, and then here's the other thing, too, is that when I have my clients follow this structure of like, let's start with 2 times a week because, well, I'll give you one example on the flip side of the spectrum. People who say, man, I don't really like the gym at all. They didn't like it because before they put so much effort in, they didn't get a result. So they're like, man, this is stupid, right? Like there's no feedback loop that leads to more dopamine because it sucks if you're just like putting effort into something and you're not getting results. So, okay, let's just start with 2 times a week, right? Within 3 to 4 weeks, man, can I add a third day a week? Like, I'm actually starting to like the gym. Like, this is getting pretty fun. Why is it getting fun? Because on their check-in form every week, it's like, I actually feel like I'm building muscle. I'm noticing changes in the mirror. Yeah, that's why you want to go to the gym more, and that's why it'll be more sustainable because you're actually doing the right shit.
Yeah, it's like the whole Asian disappointment psychology. It's like basically if you start off at a lower point and you start to enjoy the process, right? You're more consistent. You're seeing the results in that order. Then you're going to want to do more. You're yearning for more. Like you want to because you're seeing everything come to fruition. Whereas, yes, on the Asian disappointment side, it's you setting yourself at, let's say, for an A plus no matter what on a grade scale, and then you get an A, and then your parents yell at you, right? That's a continuous disappointment cycle, right? Not that I've lived it. I have for baseball, not for my grades.
This is the recurring theme in like every other podcast. Chris is like, that reminds me.
Yeah, it reminds me of my childhood of being disappointed of hitting 3 home runs in a game, not 4.
Yeah, what the fuck
Fucked
is wrong
up.
with you? It's like 4.0 GPA, 3 home runs, but not 4.
Yeah, it's 4.4 in my high school. It's actually pretty insane.
Yeah,
but
it's like, why weren't you playing chess like when you weren't at that?
Yeah, right. But it's exactly the point, though. It's you want to make sure you start off on the lower side and then build yourself up. Not that it's right or wrong, right? This is just psychology of working with so many people. Whereas if you start off with 7 days a week, like you are currently, like this person that's asking this question, once you miss a day, then it becomes like, oh, I feel like shit for it. And then it's just a continuous knocking down of your ego and of yourself, of self-fulfillment. And eventually it just comes down to, oh, I don't like to do this. Like, why am I doing this? Right? You're setting yourself up for such failure from the beginning because your expectations here and your execution is yet to be anywhere close to that yet. Right? In the beginning is just do minimal amounts. Do minimal amounts to get the most results every single time. Then build back up into a point where you enjoy it. Most people actually fit between 2 and 3, and then the guys that eventually become us, right, like a little bit more avid lifters, eventually get to like 3 to 5, right? And then that's currently where I'm at right now. I'm actually at a 4 just because it fits our lifestyle. Even though I would love to go there 6-7 days a week, and like the 6 and 7s are cold plunging, hot tub, in which case we'll get to on another podcast.
If you guys got value from this episode, if you enjoyed, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to this podcast if you're watching on another platform, tell your friends, follow us on our Instagrams as well. Mine's BenjiTucker.fit.
Mine's at Coach_Chris Lee.
And we will see you guys next time.